and she went over to the window-seat. Her father had turned from his picture and was staring at his feet. He looked very grey. "He has nice small feet," she thought, catching his eye, at once averted from her. "You're my only comfort," said Soames suddenly, "and you go on like this." Fleur's heart began to beat. "Like what, dear?" Again Soames gave her a look which, but for the affection in it, might have been called furtive. "You know what I told you," he said. "I don't choose to have anything to do with that branch of our family." "Yes, ducky, but I don't know why I shouldn't." Soames turned on his heel. "I'm not going into the reasons," he said. "You ought to trust me, Fleur." The way he spoke those words affected Fleur, but she thought of Jon, and was silent, tapping her foot against the wainscot. Unconsciously she had assumed a modern attitude, with one leg twisted in and out of the other, with her chin on one bent wrist, her other arm across her chest, and its hand hugging her elbow. There was not a line of her that was not involuted, and yet, in spite of all, she retained a certain grace. "You knew my wishes," Soames went on, "and yet you stayed on there 4 days, and I suppose that boy came with you to-day." Fleur kept her eyes on him. "I don't ask you anything," said Soames. "I make no inquisition where you're concerned." Fleur suddenly stood up, leaning out at the window with her chin on her hands. The sun had sunk behind trees, the pigeons were perched, quite still, on the edge of the dovecot. The click of the billiard balls mounted, and a faint radiance shone out below where Jack Cardigan had turned the light up. "Will it make you any happier," she said suddenly, "if I promise you not to see him for, say, the next 6 weeks?" She was not prepared for a sort of tremble in the blankness of his voice. 6 weeks? 6 years? 60 years, more like. Don't delude yourself, Fleur. Don't delude yourself." Fleur turned in alarm. "Father, what is it?" Soames came close enough to see her face. "Don't tell me," he said, "that you're foolish enough to have any feeling beyond caprice. That would be too much." And he laughed. Fleur, who had never heard him laugh like that, thought, "Then it is deep. Oh, what is it?" And putting her hand through his arm, she said lightly, "No, of course, caprice. Only I like my caprices, and I don't like yours, dear." "Mine!" said Soames bitterly, and turned away. The light outside had chilled, and threw a chalky whiteness on the river. The trees had lost all gaiety of colour. She felt a sudden hunger for Jon's face, for his hands, and the feel of his lips again on hers. And pressing her arms tight across her breast, she forced out a little light laugh. "Oh la la! What a small fuss, as Profond would say. Father, I don't like that man." She saw him stop, and take something out of his breast pocket. "You don't?" he said. "Why?" "Nothing," murmured Fleur. "Just caprice." "No," said Soames, "not caprice." And he tore what was in his hands across. "You're right. I don't like him either." "Look," said Fleur softly, "there he goes. I hate his shoes. They don't make any noise." Down in the failing light, Prosper Profond moved, his hands in his side pockets, whistling softly in his beard. He stopped and glanced up at the sky as if saying, "I don't think much of that small moon." Fleur drew back. "Isn't he a great cat?" she whispered, and the sharp click of the billiard balls rose, as if Jack Cardigan had capped the cat, the moon, caprice, and tragedy with "In off the red!" Monsieur Profond had resumed his stroll, to a teasing little tune in his beard. What was it? Oh yes, from Rigoletto. Donna o mobile. Just what he would think. She squeezed her father's arm. "Prowling," she muttered, as he turned the corner of the house. It was past that disillusioned moment which divides the day and night, still and lingering and warm, with hawthorn scent and lilac scent clinging on the riverside air. A blackbird suddenly burst out. Jon would be in London by now, in the Park perhaps, crossing the Serpentine, thinking of her. A little sound beside her made her turn her eyes. Her father was again tearing the paper in his hands. Fleur saw it was a cheque. "I shan't sell him my Gauguin," he said. "I don't know what your aunt and Imogen see in him." "Or mother." "Your mother," said Soames. "Poor father," she thought. "He never looks happy. Not really happy. I don't want to make him worse, but of course I shall have to, when John comes back. Oh, well, sufficient unto the night." "I'm going to dress," she said. In her room she had a fancy to put on her freak dress. It was of gold tissue, with little trousers of the same, tightly drawn in at the ankles, a page's cape slung from the shoulders, little gold shoes, and a gold-winged Mercury helmet, and all over her were tiny gold bells, especially on the helmet, so that if she shook her head she pealed. When she was dressed she felt quite sick because John could not see her. It even seemed a pity that the sprightly young man Michael Mont would not have a view. But the gong had sounded, and she went down. She made a sensation in the drawing-room. Winifred thought it most amusing. Imogen was enraptured. Jack Cardigan called it stunning, ripping, topping, and corking. Monsieur Profond, smiling with his eyes, said, "That's a nice small dress." Her mother, very handsome in black, sat looking at her and said nothing. It remained for her father to apply the test of common sense. "What did you put on that thing for? You're not going to dance." Fleur spun round, and the bells pealed. "Caprice!" Soames stared at her, and, turning away, gave his arm to Winifred. Jack Cardigan took her mother. Prosper Profond took Imogen. Fleur went in by herself, with her bells jingling. The small moon had soon dropped down, and May nights had fallen soft and warm, enwrapping with its grape bloom colour and its scents the billion caprices, intrigues, passions, longings, and regrets of men and women. Happy was Jack Cardigan, who snored into Imogen's white shoulder, fit as a flea; or Timothy in his mausoleum, too old for anything but baby's slumber. For so many lay awake or dreamed, teased by the criss-cross of the world. The dew fell and the flowers closed. Cattle grazed on in the river meadows, feeling with their tongues for the grass they could not see, and the sheep on the downs lay quiet as stones. Pheasants in the tall trees of the Pangbourne woods, larks on their grassy nests above the gravel pit at Wansdon, swallows in the eaves at Robin Hill, and the sparrows of Mayfair, all made a dreamless night of it, soothed by the lack of wind. The mayfly filly, hardly accustomed to her new quarters, scraped at her straw a little, and the few night-flitting things, bats, moths, owls, were vigorous in the warm darkness. But the peace of night lay in the brain of all daytime nature, colourless and still. Men and women, alone, riding the hobby-horses of anxiety or love, burned their wavering tapers of dream and thought into the lonely hours. Fleur, leaning out of her window, heard the hall clock's muffled chime of 12, the tiny splash of a fish, the sudden shaking of an aspen's leaves in the puffs of breeze that rose along the river, the distant rumble of a night train, and time and again the sounds which none can put a name to in the darkness, soft, obscure expressions of uncatalogued emotions from man and beast, bird and machine, or, maybe, from departed Forsytes, Darties, Cardigans, taking night strolls back into a world which had once suited their embodied spirits. But Fleur heeded not these sounds. Her spirit, far from disembodied, fled with swift wing from railway carriage to flowery hedge, straining after John, tenacious of his forbidden image and the sound of his voice, which was taboo. And she crinkled her nose, retrieving from the perfume of the riverside night that moment when his hand slipped between the mayflowers and her cheek. Long she leaned out in her freak dress, keen to burn her wings at life's candle, while the moths brushed her cheeks on their pilgrimage to the lamp on her dressing-table, ignorant that in a Forsyte's house there is no open flame. But at last even she felt sleepy, and, forgetting her bells, drew quickly in. Through the open window of his room, alongside Annette's, Soames, wakeful too, heard their thin faint tinkle, as it might be shaken from stars, or the dewdrops falling from a flower, if one could hear such sounds. "Caprice," he thought. "I can't tell.